this past weekend in the conference championship, we had the Bucks and the Packers going up against each other, and the Bills and the Chiefs. Ultimately, I went 0-2 in my picks. Real disappointed there. Bills disappointed me, but knew that was coming. Packers, though, that's the one I can't believe slightly, mostly because I don't want Brady to win another Super Bowl, even go one. Now we have Brady and Mahomes, which is, as a Raider fan, kind of the worst. Not happy with these quarterbacks, especially with the Bucks being the last team to beat the Raiders in a Super Bowl. There's just a lot of things going on here. Now they have Brady. Just,
20 years ago, Kyle.
Yeah, I was super into sports then. No, I wasn't. It's still fun to bring up. But let's talk about Packers and the Buccaneers, that game. Drew, get us started. What did you see in this game?
Yeah, I mean, if you would have told me before the game started that Brady was going to throw 3 interceptions, I would have thought that there's no way that the Packers end up losing this game, right? And almost every week, I feel like I'm like on here saying, look, like one play doesn't define a game. And to be fair, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that here, but I do think that there were a handful of plays that really made this game go in different directions. Yeah. I think the biggest things, giving up that touchdown, obviously at the end of the first half. I mean, even if you were able to hold them to that 57-yard field goal and they make it, I think you still feel pretty good about your team. That was just such a massive letdown, such a gigantic point swing there. And for it to happen, I mean, that pass was almost like in slow motion. It was just like, they're not going to let Scotty Miller catch this ball, right? I mean, it was just so unbelievable to me. Even at that point, go ahead and just tackle him and get a pass interference call. Give yourself a chance to stop the touchdown, right? So it was just a tough thing to watch. I was somebody, along with a lot of people on Twitter and on social media, who were even at the time really questioning Matt LaFleur's decision to kick field goals instead of go for touchdowns. First half, I was totally okay with it. Get those points when you can, but to me, ultimately, you had a chance to tie this game up with just over 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and you have Aaron Rodgers, the MVP, as your quarterback. You decided to kick a field goal there, and I really don't understand why, right? Because even if you go for it and you miss it, right, they're going to have worse field opposition. You're still going to have the 2-minute warning and 3 timeouts. So I think your defense is actually in a much better position to defend from that standpoint and get the ball back. Because either way, whether you tie the game by scoring a touchdown and getting a 2-point conversion, or whether you kick that field goal, again, either way, you're still going to have to stop them and get the ball back, right? Yeah. Well, I guess if you get the touchdown, you don't even have to get the ball back. So the field goal to me just didn't make a ton of sense because it didn't put you really in any better position to succeed. You were still going to need to stop them and get a touchdown.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing is no matter what, you're going to have to stop them. So get the points so you can take the lead if you stop them and then you end up scoring. The way their defense was playing at the time, because even when it happened, I was like, all right. And, the commentators were saying, all right, he could have probably went for that. Why didn't they? Why are they kicking here? To me, their defense was stopping Brady relatively well in the second half. They got 2 interceptions on him. And ultimately, this is why, when the second interception happened, I was watching the game with Hannah, my girlfriend, not at the time. It's not a wrong statement, but it's suggesting, no, it's fine. I was watching it with her, and she, I said, if they don't score here, this game's over, because you can't get 2 interceptions on Brady and get 0 points out of both interceptions. You can't do that. And there was 2 back-to-back interceptions.
To start the second half, right?
Start the second half. Even after Tampa Bay scores last second in the first half, and then Aaron Jones. There it is. Even Aaron Jones then fumbles the ball, and Tampa Bay scores. So they had a 2-touchdown swing there. And then you get 2 interceptions, and you get 0 points out of it. That game was over to me at that point.
Well, especially because Green Bay was able to answer immediately back once the third quarter started by scoring a touchdown. Yep. And then Brady throws that instant pick, right? At that point, you're like, okay, so we got that touchdown back. We can make this this up here. And that's why I will always say it's never one play, right? Because even though you had that play at halftime where I think a lot of Packers fans felt the nail in the coffin at that time,
Oh, yeah.
there was plenty of opportunities for the Packers to come back. They continue to fumble the ball. And to Aaron Rodgers' credit, I mean, I'll say he didn't have his left tackle, which was noticeable. Jason Pierre-Paul is a great defensive end, but he was playing like, I mean, Aaron Donald's out there. He was unblockable. Yesterday. That created some huge issues. You had a Packers receiver drop a 2-point conversion, which ultimately probably didn't affect the game a whole lot. But there were a number of issues. Rodgers himself could have potentially run the ball in for a touchdown at
I
a certain
don't agree
point.
with that, though.
I mean, that's why I said potentially, right? Like, I mean, okay. but like ultimately, I just think that in a playoff game, you have to play to win. If you would have gone for it on that 4th down and tie that game up, you're forcing the Bucs to then either have to really run the clock down and go to overtime, which, fair point, is nothing guaranteed, right? Like we saw Brady when he was with the Pats get the ball back in overtime against the Chiefs in the conference championship and win that game. But you might also force the Bucs into trying to score a field goal, and maybe then you're able to get another pick or something like that to happen. I guess my thing was that, because you're exactly right, Kyle. They had been stopping Brady up until that point. But to me, I'm thinking it's Tom Brady, 2 minutes left, playoffs. And even though maybe Brady hasn't been as effective in 2-minute drives like against the Rams and against the Bears earlier in this season, there was just no way. I thought if you kick that ball to Brady, I didn't care what the Packers defense or what Brady had done all game. To me, it's like, you give Brady the ball back in this spot, you are never seeing that ball again. And inevitably, that's what ended up happening. And what's just like crazy to me too is that like we talked about like how we talked about the fact yesterday that Brady was not, the reason necessarily that they won this game. He had three picks and stuff, and I think definitely in a vacuum that might be true. You can 100% make the case that it was the Bucs D that got them to this point. But I also think you look at this Bucs team, while it's a stacked roster, they didn't make the playoffs last year, right? Now, this year, they won 3 road playoff games, including a game in Lambeau Field against Aaron Rodgers, including against a Saints team that had already beaten you twice in the regular season, and then a Washington team, right? But this was an extremely difficult road to the playoffs, quite possibly the most difficult road that Tom Brady has ever had to face to get into the playoffs. And although this wasn't like necessarily an MVP season for Brady, this was a really interesting match between these two guys, because Brady's the guy that kind of has all the team accolades, and Aaron Rodgers had a lot of the, singular things, even probably winning MVP this season and such. But And I'm a guy who over the course of the years has been pounding the table saying Aaron Rodgers is a better overall quarterback than Tom Brady is. And I think when you just look at talent, I think that's probably true. But when I look at the fact that Tom Brady has been in the NFC for 1 season and already has the same number of NFC championships that Aaron Rodgers has, which if you also look, it's also the same number that Rex Grossman has and Jake Delhomme has and a really old Kurt Warner with the Cardinals have, that Nick Foles has, right? Like it starts to lose a little bit of the shine there. But I do think that even though this is such a team-based game and no individual player is ever solely responsible for a team making the Super Bowl, I do think when you look back just at the fact that Brady has been in 18% of Super Bowls, when you look at Peyton, who is probably the closest modern comparison to him, got to 4 and he was 2-2, right? That Montana, I think got to 5, right? So, and that he's like doubling these like greats numbers. The fact that Rodgers, who I say is better, has only had 1 Super Bowl appearance. I hate Brady. I can't stand him. But at a certain point, maybe it is just how he interacts with teammates and stuff, but he actually makes the players around him better. And at this point, he's the GOAT, and I hate him and I can't stand him. And I think he's the most boring player to watch ever. I'm excited that the Chiefs are inside this, but he's a marvel, and it's really hard to talk against Brady at this point in time.
Yeah, and it's why I want him to retire so I can kind of stop hating him. Because then I'd be like, oh yeah, he was the go. He was the go. But he's out of the league now, so who cares? But he's still in it, so
Yeah, I think
um
he's going to run this team back too. So
yeah,
they might have
that's the
a
crazy.
mini Tampa Bay dynasty.
That's the crazy thing. Yeah, it's going into a new division or a new conference and getting the same results. And I think that's what you kind of said the same thing, but it's his that's his worth is you don't have to worry about your quarterback.
Well,
When
I think
push comes to
especially
shove
in the playoffs too.
at the playoffs, yep, at the end of the game, you need to run out the clock. You need to get a first down. You need to get 2 first downs to kill the game right here. Brady's gonna do it, and
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 that's
it's not
something that
gonna
I
be
was
like
thinking
barely
about.
getting it. It's gonna be you're getting all these chunk plays all of a sudden, and you're like, what? And it's that's Brady. He's playing a chess match, and it's annoying.
I was thinking about that even in terms of the Super Bowls that he's won. Like,
Yeah,
rarely have the Super Bowls. I mean, yeah, you have certain exceptions. The Falcons was a big high scoring Super Bowl game where they had, I think, score like 28 unanswered points or something to come back. The Eagles was a high scoring affair. So Brady has shown that he can be in those shootouts as well.
you
But
can.
in
Yeah.
most of the games that they've had, like versus the Rams, it's
Nope.
funny
There's just
versus the Rams, both new Rams, Sean McVay, and old
old
Rams
man.
with I think Jeff Fisher still.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy. Did they bring him? No, because he was with the Titans at that point. That I'm sorry, that Rams team was Mike Martz. Crazy man. Which is funny because the Rams beat Jeff Fisher when he was with the Titans. Anyways, Brady, it wasn't like he was having like 4 or 5 touchdown games, but when the game's on the line at the end, which most of these Super Bowls came down to, nobody was able to ever do it better. And I think even looking at where this team was midseason, 7-5, chemistry issues. Between weeks 1 and 5, they led the league in the NFL in penalties. For them to have all that happen and then end the season where they're at. I mean, not end it yet, but be in the Super Bowl. I mean, man, like I had them as a Super Bowl favorite before the year started. I definitely did not have them as a Super Bowl favorite
No.
out week 12.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were able to right this ship so quickly. I think also the fact that in the playoffs you saw I mean, this is the farthest Bruce Arians has ever gotten to, right?
Yeah.
So I think the fact that you see his style, I mean, the fact that Brady threw that touchdown at the end of the first half, that would have never happened in Belichick's offense. It would have never happened in probably 30 other teams in the NFL. But the fact that you happen to have Bruce Arians, maybe this marriage is a little bit better than I've been giving it credit for.
If it continues this way where they're just like we're just gonna take shots and we're gonna show that we can still do this, God, I'm gonna hate Brady more. And we're I don't want to get too much into Super Bowl talk because we'll do that next week because
Right.
the game's not next week, so why waste content? So I kind of want to touch on Packers real quick because Packers now are in an interesting position where they drafted a quarterback last year. He sat a year
Who did
behind
not
Rodgers.
dress, who was never dressed.
Yes, so
He was not their backup this year. I just
no,
want
yeah,
to. Okay.
yeah, that's a good point. So what was he second round pick? I don't think was it first round. You have a first round pick on a quarterback who never dressed. You lost in the conference champion. Do you think you could run it back with Rodgers? There's a lot of reports that are questioning if Rodgers is even going to be on the Packers. I think he's quoted, and this might be a little. Whatever. I think he's quoted on saying, there's no reason I won't be back, but we'll see. And that's not word for word what he said, but that idea is like he wants to be back, but is he going to be? And I think that's showing that he might doubt that this organization wants to stick with him because they did draft Jordan Love with a first round pick, and do they think he's ready? When you saw these other rookie quarterbacks start this year, they all look decent. They all look like most look like they need a little more time. And I'm not comparing Jordan Love to like Burrow or Justin Herbert or even those are the top two. But I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Love ended up better than Tua or better than Jalen Hurts. So it's interesting to see what they're going to end up doing. I don't know their cap situation. And if
Yeah,
it's
they
messy,
are not in a good cap
okay.
spot. And not only do they not have a ton of a cap space, there's a lot of guys that are going to be gone. Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, I believe, are both in the last year of their contract. You still have a deal in there, but I mean, Aaron Jones this year at least was a top 5 running back in the NFL. He's going to get paid by somebody, and if you franchise him, it's going to be extremely expensive, right? So, there's players on the defensive side to like this was the best shot by far that the Packers had to win. And I think that, I mean, Rodgers even said that when he acknowledged that a lot of these guys aren't going to be back next year. Like he very much knew that. And I think like if the Packers decided to move off of him for some reason, which I think would be idiotic and absurd, they would only end up saving $5 million, right? Wow. There's a couple things with the Jordan Love pick that I think is interesting, is I do think part of Rodgers' logic at the end of that was saying, look, they drafted a first round quarterback last year. We lost in the NFC Championship last year.
Oh yeah.
What has changed? In fact, we lost it at like home this year. So in a certain way, it's worse, right? So I think there's a little bit of an idea by him by saying like, why we got just as far last year and they drafted this guy in the first round. Why would things be different now? That's their guy. And I think part of that is resentment, saying if you would have drafted another receiver,
yeah, I did.
If you would have drafted a tight end or something like that, that would have really helped this year. Maybe he would be more inclined to stay. But I would also argue, I'm a huge proponent of the butterfly effect and stuff. Aaron Rodgers, I don't think has the same type of season this year if you don't draft Jordan Love. I don't think that's a reason why you should draft Jordan Love, but I think it's hindsight's always 2020, right?
Yep. Yeah, that hindsight is he played on a different level because he had that pressure. But you still have an organization with one foot out the door, ready to move on. And it's kind of a similar yet different scenario with Favre and Rodgers, you know? And do they just continue that? They let a quarterback prospect that they like, they draft him, they sit him for 2 to 3 seasons, let their kind of star franchise quarterback go do what he wants, and then they'll just continue on with their new quarterback that they've been developing. Maybe they keep doing that, and that wouldn't surprise me. But we'll see if that's what Rodgers wants. But yeah, I mean, you get to the conference championship, and maybe you should have drafted shored up your defense a little bit. Maybe you should have got some offensive playmaker there. It's the same thing you said, and I think it makes sense why Rodgers would be a little annoyed because he had an MVP season, and that draft, you drafted a quarterback.
What I think is really interesting in this like Rodgers Brady comparison too, and I was thinking about this, especially because like I've been pounding the table just saying the Chiefs are the Warriors of the NFL, which I'm going to say again in a few minutes here. But another great parallel here was like Brady is LeBron to me, and Aaron Rodgers is Kevin Durant. I don't want to get into a whole LeBron Jordan thing because that's not what this debate is. But like I think you see it where like just looking at who's more talented. I think Rodgers is more talented. I think KD is more talented. And on one-on-one, I don't know how a quarterback's going to play another quarterback one-on-one. But like I mean, I think you could definitely make the case this is a more skilled player, a better passer, or in Kevin Durant's case, you know, a far better shooter. And things Kevin Durant can get his own shot from anywhere on the court whenever he wants. Rodgers can throw from any angle at any distance. Yeah. But when you look at making the players around you better, at making it to championship after championship after, I mean, one of these guys has won, you know, or Durant, I guess, has, you know, won 2, while LeBron has been to, I think, 10 finals now. And so
but
it's a really strong,
when you take KD, you're like, I don't think, yeah, you helped them win those championships, but you also had Steph and Clay with Brady.
True, yeah.
And I think the opposite, it's actually is messing up your comparison because I think that works for Brady. You're like, yeah, you won these, but you had Belichick in your defense and you had the Randy Moss year.
They lost the Randy Moss years.
Yeah, but you know, but their offense was, you know, that's what I'm saying.
No, so. I still think I love this a comparison just because I think it shows that like, because there's a lot of people the same way that I was talking about Aaron Rodgers. A lot of people are saying that about Kevin Durant the past couple of years. Like before he was hurt, he was the best player and stuff. It's like, well, I mean, maybe, yeah, and to your point, I mean, he had the team and stuff too. But even when he was in like OKC. There were people of certain ilks that were saying that he was a better player than LeBron was, just based on stats, how he played, everything else. But I think it's the intangibles, it's the unquantifiable things. Brady does so much to make his team better.
He's a
that
team
I
player, even though
yeah
he's a dick.
yeah there you go.
Even though he's not, like he's just
But he is
he's a little
like
cocky, but like he's kind of earned it too, right? You know, it's I go
yeah
back and
to me
forth. I
it's
compliment him and I think he's great, and then other times I'm like, no, he's a piece of garbage, and I don't want to
I
talk
just
about him.
hate the fact that when Tom Brady screams, literally like just is screaming at a teammate, Skip Bayless calls it leadership, and then when Terrell Owens does it, he calls him a bitch. Or okay, anyways,
He calls them names.
yeah, but it's just like, why does Brady, in so much of the media's eyes, can do no wrong, and they find a way to justify everything into his favor. Even now, I mean, just saying like the GOAT stuff. If you want to talk like about the whole playoff run and how great this playoff run was, and that it was probably the most difficult playoff run that he's ever had, I 100% buy that. That's great. But also acknowledge the fact that he had 3 interceptions in the conference championship game. You know,
Yeah, bad interceptions.
Yeah.
Like it's not like the Packers defense did anything crazy. Just bad decisions on his part, like to throw the ball as he's getting hit. It's like, Brady, you know better than that. Like, sure, take the shot. And that guy was open if he hit that throw. But then I was like, God, he's gonna make that throw. Look at him. Anyways, yeah, close it out. Going forward, looking forward to see what happens with the Packers. Watson, Rodgers. No, I don't think so. But it would be fun, right?
man, that'd be crazy.
Yeah, and now Brady is in another Super Bowl. Yay.